Okay everyone, so in this video we're going to continue working with text in FlutterFlow. So you can see here, just as a reminder, what we started in class is we have a welcome page. The user clicks start. That takes you to a what's your name page, and there is a text field here where the user is invited to type their name. Now if they click submit without typing in anything, they see an error message here, first name is required. Once they type in a name such as Professor Hahn, that name is visible up here in the final page. So let's continue where we left off in class. So I'm going to come back over to FlutterFlow. Here's my basic app, and just to refresh our memory, we have a app state variable here called username, and it is of type string, which means it holds characters. And it is set to persisted. If for some reason you don't have that, you could just click up here and create a new version of that. So if I come back over to our widget tree, you can see here we were working in the username page. Now I made a mistake in class and actually started working with disabling this button. And actually we could do that, but for the purposes of this video, we want to keep that button enabled all the time. And so right now, where I'm over in the properties panel where it says button disable options, I'm going to turn that off so that this button is always visible. Now what we want to do is actually we're going to chain together a number of different events. So just to show you what we're going to do, we're going to chain together a number of actions. And the trigger is going to happen when the user taps on or clicks the submit button. And so let's take a look at what's going to happen. So once the user taps the button, first thing we're going to do is validate our form. Remember that our input text field is inside a form validator. And after that, we can play a sound. And then ultimately what we're going to do, we can tell it which sound we want to play, which is the jingle wave. And then we want to update app state. So we are going to tell, we want to tell FlutterFlow that we want our variable username, which we remember is a string, is going to be set to the value of the text field username. So whatever the user types into that text field, that's going to become stored in the variable called username. And then finally, we are going to navigate to the lesson menu page. So those are the 4 actions that are going to be triggered when the user clicks the submit button. All right, so let's go back over to the app and start building that out. Okay, so we're back in the app now. And one of the things that we're going to need to be able to do is to play a sound. So ultimately what we want to do is make sure we've actually added the sound file to our app assets. So I'm going to come over here in the navigation bar and click on the media assets button. And you can see here I have a wave file called jingle.wave. Now if you don't remember where to get that, you can download it here, and it's in this file. So you're looking for jingle.wave. Okay, so now that we're back in our app, we come to the widget tree. What we're going to do is chain together a bunch of actions when the user clicks this button. So to do that, I'm going to come over to the properties panel and I'm going to switch to actions. So right now we have one that we put in here, which was just the navigation one. So actually I'm going to click edit here. And we know that when the user taps that button, we're going to navigate to the lesson page. Well, that's actually a little bit premature. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this action because I want to replace it with the series of actions that we just looked at. So again, on tap, we want to add an action. And what we want to do is actually validate our form. So I'm just going to do a search here for validate form. And I'm going to select that. And it's going to select form to validate. Now this is really easy because we only have one form. It's the first one. So it's form_1. So we're going to select that. Now importantly, we want to check this checkbox right here. Terminate if validation fails. Now, if that's enabled, what happens is when the user clicks the submit button and there's no text, the form doesn't validate. In other words, the user didn't type in a name, this sequence of actions is going to stop. So it won't continue on. And that helps us. But if it does continue, what we want to do is trigger another action, add action. And what we want to do is actually play sound, which is listed under alerts and notifications. So we're going to say play sound. And FlutterFlow will automatically give the sound a name. We could change that, but we don't need to. And then what we're going to do is tell it that we want to use an asset that's in our files, our media assets. And which one? It knows there's only one audio file there, so we're going to click Jingle Wave. Excellent. So now we've chained together two actions, and all of these actions are triggered by the on-tap trigger. And remember, because we selected terminate if validation fails, in other words, if the form is no good, this second action, which is to play the sound, won't take place. But let's assume that the form does work. So now what we're going to do is click plus, and we want to add another condition. And what we're going to do is state management, and we want to update app state. And specifically, what do we want to do? Well, we want to set the value of username string, and we want to set its value to be equal to one of our widget states, which is the text field, enter your first name. That easy. And then finally, we want to add a fourth action. And so I'm going to chain together yet another action, and that is going to be to navigate to a specific page, which is our lesson menu page. Excellent. So we've chained together 4 actions here, but we know that all 4 of these actions will only execute if our form is validated. So let me hit close here. Good. And we better go ahead and test this. So I am going to click on the test button. Okay, so we're back in the debugger view now. And if I look over here, I see I have 2, let me just close this. We have 2 app state variables. Lesson 1 complete equals true, and then username Dan. So that actually is because I've been testing, but yours is probably blank. So let's see what happens. When you click start, it comes in here and it actually asks you to enter your first name. And I can clear this, and if there's nothing in there and I click next, notice I get the enter your first name is required message. But what I could do is type in Dan and then click next. And hopefully what you heard, you were able to hear the sound play. But if we look back over at username, it says Dan because that's what it got set to. So we're now actually able to record that value in this variable. That's great. Now let me show you one problem that we have. If I click the back button and I click back, notice now it says enter your first name. Instead, because it already knows my username, it should populate this field with enter your first name. So let's fix that issue. That's easy to do. So I'm going to come back to my username page, and here, come over to the properties panel. For the initial value, excuse me, what we want to do is we're going to take this text out. And what we're going to do is actually set it to be equal to an app state variable. And you guessed it, we want it to be the username value. All right, very good. And now when we come over to the lesson 1 homepage, we want to say, instead of welcome to lesson 1, we want to say, or excuse me, we should be on the lesson menu page. We want to be able to say, welcome so-and-so, whoever the person is. So let's add in another text field here. So I'm just going to come over and I'm going to drag it up to the top. And I'm going to say, choose a lesson a little bit smaller, more of a headline here, and not black, but let's make it tertiary text. So it's that orange color. And then here, I'm going to select Hello World, and I'm going to make that bigger text, headline. And what I want to do is I don't want it to say Hello World, but I want to say welcome username. So how do we do that? Well, let's get rid of Hello World. And before we actually edit that variable, let's put a little padding on the top here so it's not quite so crowded. I'm just going to push that down. And then text. What we want to do here is combine text. So how do we do that? We click the combine text value, and then we're going to say welcome, comma, space, and then we want to add text. And what specific text? We want an app state variable, which is going to be username. And then I want it to end with an exclamation point. So I'm going to add a little bit more text, and I'm going to put in an exclamation point, confirm. And so in our app builder view, it looks like this. So it says welcome, comma, and then it's got this kind of placeholder syntax, and then the exclamation point. And that's the placeholder for the person's name, the user's name. So, okay, let's come back over and let's do an instant reload. Okay, so here's my app, and you can see username is already set to Dan. If I click start, look at that. It already populated the text field with Dan. Now, if I was to clear that and tried to go forward, nope, you have to enter your first name. So let me enter a different first name. I will say Bart. And now if I click next, it says welcome Bart, choose a lesson. And we can see over here in username, the value is set to Bart. And if I was to go back, boom, it already has that value stored there. So that, my friends, is how you chain together multiple actions and how you capture text from a user, store it in a variable, and then display it on the screen somewhere. Thanks for watching.